Okay, it's my final video on the Rubinstein French. I am no longer hiding moves because this will not be guessing. I'm just going to be going through some theory. I'm going to go through it kind of rapid fire because I think we've talked enough about themes and ideas that I hope the moves are fairly clear. So we got a French. We counter in the center against knight c3 or knight d2. We take on e4, and either way we're going to get the same position. White, I've seen f3, and I really like bishop b4 here. Our point is, now the knight can't recapture. If the pawn recaptures, we have queen h4 check. And they can't play g3 due to queen takes e4, forking the king and rook, so they have to move their king. This is awful for white. They can try to delay recapturing, but it's hard to find a very useful move for them. Something like bishop d2 hangs this pawn. Where does this bishop have good squares? I don't know, c4, b5 doesn't do anything. c4 doesn't really do anything. Our pawn on e6 shuts it down. This knight wants to go to f3, but we haven't taken yet. So bishop f4 gets played sometimes, and then just knight f6. Now, we still, if they take, we can take back. Black's just better here. f3 is nothing to worry about. So again, we play to trade our knights. Now, there's a lot of moves here. Knight g3. We can play c5 or bishop e7. c5 is basically a tempo up on a similar line in the Caro-Kann. If you look at the knight d7 Caro-Kann, black's going to play c6, c5 there. Here we got c5 in one go. Black is equal. Bishop e7 is also fine. I recommend b6 with a standard development of bishop d6, castles, or bishop b7, then bishop d6, castles, and c5. The only thing white can do to really put significant pressure is try this bishop b5 idea, and with knight e5, and in fact it looks quite strong because there's a lot of pressure here. But black can play c6 and is totally fine. And the point is, first, if bishop takes, we trade, and the knight has no squares except e5, after which we take it. Black is already better. White either has to make a big concession like king f1 or block with the queen, and then after bishop b4, they still probably have to make a big concession, because bishop d2, we can take, then play rook d8 or castles queenside, hit the king, you know. If c3, we just take it, because bc3, queen c3 forks e1 and a1, so they probably have to play like king f1 anyway here. It's very good for black. Better is knight takes c6, after which we still play queen c7. The knight has to retreat. And then I was looking at bishop takes g2 here. I think white gets some play there if they play precisely. So I like a6. Bishop takes d7, knight takes d7, trades. Now g2 is still a problem. If they do something like castling, we often have some very aggressive ideas against their king. So they should probably play f3. And after bishop d6, black has the two bishops. Black has these nice c and d files. f3 is a very awkward move for white to have played. Black has full compensation for the pawn. So b6 is playable. Bishop b5 is somewhat threatening, but black equalizes if they know what they're doing. And if you're scared of this, just play c5 or bishop e7 instead. I wouldn't be, though. I think we should welcome this. I've never faced bishop b5 here. I've faced like bishop d3, after which black is just very comfortable natural development. Another sideline is bishop g5. Here we saw Meyer against Hansen play h6. That's fine. I'm going to recommend bishop e7. We now threaten knight takes e4 because we broke the pin. After takes, I really like taking back bishop with the idea that we want our knight on f6 at the end, and we're happy to trade an extra pair of pieces first. And this position looks totally fine to me for black. We're just going to play b6, bishop e7, c5, and it's normal stuff. Bishop d3 is a key move. Because there is this problem with knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, bishop g5. We've talked about this a bunch. Therefore, I'm going to recommend c5 here. Always be c5ing. Knight takes f6, knight takes f6 will transpose to 6 knight takes f6, which we'll cover later. dc5 is independent. Black has a few choices. Knight takes e4, bishop takes, knight c5. And, we have the two bishops. We can't castle. It's about equal. I'd take black here. I like the bishops. But if black doesn't want to do that, doesn't like having to take back on d8 with the king, it's also just taking on c5. When after trades, this just returns to a main line that we will see later. And another move here is castles. After which, we swap, we play knight f6. They can play bishop d3, and this will transpose to later lines, or they can play bishop g5, after which we break the pin. We're still threatening e4. And now I really like gf6. We haven't castled yet. We have some rook g8 options. Probably not yet. h7 is loose. But the thing is, the bishop on e4 is really strong in a lot of lines. It really hinders b6. And it's nice to be able to drive it away. And gf6 prepares f5 when suddenly we have the option to develop normally again. And I like having the g-file open. I think black has a kind of nice active position here. c3, and then just queen c7. Keep b7 under control. No need for f5 yet. It's possible bishop d3 to bishop b5 check will be annoying if we chase it quickly. So instead, queen c7, get a little closer to castling. Maybe we can play bishop d7, and bishop d7 and castle queenside sometimes. Maybe f5 first. I think black is a pleasant position. I really like the two bishops. I think all these lines are fine. So knight takes f6 is the main move. Then bishop d3. Other moves. Bishop g5, question the bishop, though c5 immediately is fine. Then always be c5ing. I don't face these bishop b5 check lines. I put them in here because I think they're critical, like they're white's best tries. But they don't come up in my games much. White, a lot more of the time, will set up with bishop d3, and we will get to those lines. I really should emphasize which lines I see the most. I see knight g3 a lot. I play b6. I never see bishop b5 here. I see like bishop d3, and I can just develop comfortably and get games similar to themes we've seen. I see bishop d3, c5 a bunch. And the line I get most here is probably dc5. And I've usually just played knight takes c5 and transposed back into lines we'll see later. This position is very common, and we will get to it in a bit. I occasionally see bishop g5 stuff, but never with like bishop b5 check. But let's give the line. Just block the check, take back queen, and we're not worried about the doubled pawns. Our king sometimes goes kingside. And in general, we haven't been too worried about the doubled pawn on f6, and we're especially unworried if we haven't castled, because it gives us other options. And we still might castle behind it. c3 gets played a bit. Again, I've never faced knight e5 here, but it's really the only critical thing. If white develops normally, black will also develop normally, bishop b7, castles. Probably the kingside moves first, and then b6, bishop b7. But c5 is not very threatening. This is a clever idea, though, because bishop b5 check is now annoying. Black should just stop it. Again, I've never faced this. Black just supports the c5 pawn when it's attacked by the bishop. Check, again, this is critical. I've never faced it. We should block knight. White can add pressure. But this move actually makes white's position kind of tricky. Which way should they recapture? Turns out, neither, which gives black a pretty good game. If bishop takes, then a b5, and their knight's now hanging. So they should take back pawn, you'd think. But after rook b8, this pawn's isolated, and white cannot keep the pin any longer. If they trade everything on d7, white's just in a worse endgame, their pawn's bad. If they retreat, black might play b5, bishop d6, bishop b7, get castled. Black has a better game. Correct moves bishop takes d7, and queen takes d4. Black can stop white castling. Tactics ensue, and we get, a balanced position. Both kings are a little awkward. Again, I've never faced this. I don't think it's very important theory to know. Always be c5ing. If knight a5, play knight e5. Sometimes you want to play a6 to stop bishop b5. Bishop e3 is an important move. Knight d5 is the main reply, but as I said in a previous video, I think this position is a little tricky to play. Therefore, I really like Jörg Meyer's bishop d6, and then we just get normal development. And always be c5ing, and take back b. We want to use the b file. But I think the important thing to remember here is knight d5 is useful against the bishop, but we do not have to play it immediately. We can do all our other stuff first, and at some point, we'll play knight d5. So the main move is bishop d3, then c5. Now, white can take or ignore. I don't know if I've ever faced bishop e3. The usual thing is to just defend our c-pawn. Again, I don't get these lines much. One of the reasons I did all the other videos before this one is because I think the actual theory is not too relevant to playing it, because the lines that show up at most at master level, high level play, are just not lines I ever get. And I'm a master, I'm pretty good, I play pretty good opponents, and I just don't face these lines. I face stuff where I get similar structures and similar themes, and therefore I think it's really important to know those structures and themes. And I think one should have an acquaintance with the actual theory, but I don't think it's that critical to playing the opening well. Bishop b5 and knight e5 can be annoying, so a6 is played here. Just normal development. Castles, cd4. After knight d4, we of course do not want to hang our queen. Instead, we're playing bishop c5 to displace the knight. If the knight comes to f3, this will transpose to lines we'll get to in a moment. If the knight comes to b3, now the knight cannot harass our bishop from d4 to b5. Therefore, bishop d6 is a nice active square. And then queen c7 creates a nice threat on h2. And now we bring the bishop out. We don't want to play b6 because it often gives them a really nice bishop in the middle. So a better way can be to play bishop d7 to c6 in certain positions. Bishop e3 has a big threat. Knight takes e6 will then pick up c5, so black should retreat the bishop to a safer square. I like castles. e5 I think is also playable, and then e5, and black should be fine. Knight f3 will be looked at in a moment, because dc5, bishop c5 castles transposes to knight f3 there. White can also play queen e2. We get normal play. I like h6 if given the opportunity. One reason we haven't played h6 is because of takes in queen e4, but here the queen doesn't fork the rook on a8 because this diagonal is blocked, so that's not so scary. And another reason we haven't played h6 is because a rook's on d1 and there are immediate threats against the queen, but that's not here yet. So I like h6 here. h4 is an interesting try. If they retreat, we have queen a5 check getting out of the pin, their king's still in the center. c3 and knight d5. We threaten knight f4. We might threaten knight takes c3. The bishop now has nothing to chomp on. Black is a great game. h4 is an interesting try, but again, queen a5 check's really good. Get out of the pin. We don't need to get mated by taking on g5. If bishop d2, we've distracted the bishop. We're now hitting b2. Our knight's not threatened anymore. They're not going to blow us out here. And if they play c3, they can also play like king f1, which might be best, but that's obviously a big concession. Then knight g4. We broke the pin, and now we hit f2. Okay, so castles is the main move. Castles, bishop g5, b6. We finish standard development. Notice they play queen e2 after b6. We have time for bishop b7, so there's no bishop f6, queen e4 nonsense to scare us. Rook a d1 lining up with their queen. Now this position I talked a lot about in themes, because how do we deal with this pin and this threat of bishop takes h7? And the answer is, it's totally fine if they double our pawns. We can stabilize the king side. They could try not to. I've only faced bishop f6 here, but knight e5 is apparently a move. We can contest the d-file, and then force them to take. Notice, when we play queen c7, when we're recapturing, we're often going for this f5, h6, king g7 setup. I've talked about that a bunch, and we will get it again in this video. h6 can be a useful move to have already moved towards the desired setup. Knight g4 hits both the pawns. We save the pawns. We play rook h8. We're ready to play h5. Black's fine here. Again, the two bishops are very good. As long as we're not mated, we're fine, and we're not mated here. And another line is queen g4 check, king f8. We want to keep our eye on f7. King h8 has very few squares for the king. Knight has to retreat. And then f5. And notice, very sneakily, we've gotten our desired construction with h6, king g7, f5. Black is better. White has no way to continue the attack effectively. We have covered all the entry squares. I love when you get this setup. It looks so vulnerable, and it's just fine. It's great. Sometimes we might think about bishop f3 and rook g8, but, black's better. Another idea is bishop e7, maybe come to f6. Great position. We very sneakily set up our ideal construction. So bishop f6, gf6, bishop e4. Other moves are not so threatening. Black is going to play to the d-file and also set up our h6, king g7, f5 idea, after which we should be delighted with our king side. Bishop e4, contest the d-file. Bishop takes and then contest the d-file is also fine. So is h6 here, getting started with f5 and king g7. I talked in a previous video why f5 or king g7 first is a worse move order. I won't cover it again here. Sorry, I'm really speeding through this video, but I think the theory is something that is secondary to the ideas, especially in this opening. And if I want this video to be a resource if you have a theoretical problem and you want to check my recommendation. Here is a place for you to check it, and you can check it quickly here. But this video is not going to be nearly as educational as the prior ones were. Rook 88 immediately is also fine. But contest the file. White is trying to sneak over and get some pressure. I think this is a nice idea for white. And black can play bishop f8, black is equal, bishop g7, and f5 coming. The bishop will be good on the long diagonal. And this is a nice move to remember, because the bishop on c5 feels good, but doesn't always have a purpose. And sometimes bishop f8 to g7 or e7 to f6, if those squares are available, gives the bishop a square. I think black's totally fine in the Rubinstein French. I think Jörg Meyer's record with it is a very nice record. I think at high levels, it's hard for black to create winning chances. You know, you get these positions, maybe queens are traded. I think at my level, it's still very possible to create winning chances. You know, endgames, there are just a lot of mistakes made in them. But at higher levels, you know, black's not going to get many wins out of this kind of position. So, all right, that's a theory on the Rubinstein French. I hope it helped fill out the French repertoire. Yeah, love the Rubinstein French. Give it a go. Enjoyable opening.